Welcome back. I'm excited today to have Dan Clark here. Dan Clark, as I've heard your message, I've seen you speaking we kind of sing the same tune. My brand, Be the Hero, it's all about the power of influence and how people have an obligation to really rise and influence others for good, of course. And so I'm excited to have you share some of your stories and your wisdom. So anyway, everybody stay tuned. You look a lot fancier than I do.
You're so funny.
So I really appreciate you taking a minute to interview. You've got a lot of stories. I've heard you tell a lot of amazing things and an extensive speaking history. I just wonder if we could dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, please. What do you want to know?
Well, what got you into speaking?
You know, I really believe that every single person on the planet's had what is called a significant emotional event, SEE. And a significant emotional event is defined by psychologists, psychiatrists as an event that we can actually quantify how we thought and believed and how we acted before it occurred and how we now think differently and act differently because it occurred. So the two operative words are before and because, before and because. And probably the single most significant emotional event in my life was when I was paralyzed playing football. You know, I battled cancer in my throat when I was an 8-year-old kid, and I've had all these experiences, and we all have them. But in the speaking world, we always talk about what is your signature story. Mm-hmm. And mine, in a nutshell, was I played football for 13 years. And one day in practice, the dream ended. We had a tackling drill. Coach blew the whistle. Two of us ran into each other full speed. The only parts of our bodies that made contact, Lyle's helmet crashed into my helmet. We were 15 yards apart, a violent head-on collision. My shoulder pads, my shoulder was smashed into the cutting edge of my fiberglass pads, and we slammed to the ground. And when Lyle got off of me, I had compressed a vertebrae in my neck. I'd severed what is called the axillary nerve in my right deltoid muscle, and I'd suffered a grade level 2 concussion. And in the late 70s, we didn't know a lot about concussions. So basically that night I just perspired profusely, I shook like a leaf, I threw up on myself, and I cried myself to sleep. Mm-hmm. So I stayed paralyzed for 14 months and went to 16 of the very best doctors in all of North America, and every single one of them told me I would never get any better. And as I started to get better, I was asked to speak, and I'm not going to get you in the boring details, but I was invited to speak to a high school football team out in the country someplace. And I'm driving up the canyon trying to figure out what I could tell these young men, and I'm actually crying because I'm feeling sorry for myself. And when I get out of the car and I walk around the corner, they're coming towards me in a golf cart, wheelchair-looking thing, is their coach, Jan Smith, who has multiple sclerosis. Mm-hmm. And suddenly I didn't feel sorry for myself. So fast forward, I spoke to 7 of their 8 football games, spoke to them before 7 of their 8 football games, and they won the state championship. I started realizing the significance of emotion and words and character traits. And the principal asked me to come and speak to the school. It went well. I only had about 7 minutes of material really with the story, so I invited 4 of my friends to come with me, and I created a not-for-profit, and we spoke to 5 high schools. The next year we spoke to 13 high schools. Mm-hmm. I thought we were onto something. I invited all my friends to join me. I said, I'm going to take this statewide and nationwide. And they said, get your head out of the clouds. That ticked me off. So I basically said, bite the wall. And I made an appointment with the Utah State Board of Education. 7 members, anybody can get on the program for 15 minutes. I told them my story. I shared my high school assembly. They voted unanimously to endorse me. Lila Bjorklund made a phone call to Warren Pugh, who was the Speaker of the House of Representatives. He invited me to the Capitol building. I spoke to the entire legislature and did my whole high school assembly speech for 45, 50 minutes. And they voted unanimously to fund me to speak to every high school and junior high in the state of Utah.
So how short or long of a period of time is this?
That was 2 years. I don't know what a calendar year, well, 2 school years where I spoke to 5 schools. Remember, football season ends right about, the 1st of December or whenever the playoffs are over. And then I spoke to 5 schools, and so it was the next calendar school year where I spoke to 13 schools. So it was about 2 years after I started to recover. And I spoke to every high school and junior high in the state of Utah. Then they renewed the contract for 1983. And part of my recovery was listening to a cassette tape by a, quote, motivational speaker by the name of Zig Ziglar.
Mm-hmm.
Never heard of this guy before. I thought his mom ran out of names. So out of curiosity, I plugged it in, I listened to it, and it changed my whole life because he was a storyteller. So now he's coming into Salt Lake City, Utah to do one of these big PMA rallies with Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, Robert Schuller, and the gang. So I positioned myself backstage because he literally saved my life. Zig, can I take you to dinner? He said, I'm coming back to Salt Lake City in 3 weeks. Call Lori Majors in my office and see what we can do, how we can get together. I hounded her every day. She finally said, you can pick him up at the airport, take him to Hotel Utah. And in 15 minutes, I had him convinced that he should see my high school assembly. I had slides, I had a narration, a little video. And he says, when we checked into the hotel, is there somewhere I could see this? And I said, yeah, I've rented the small ballroom off the foyer. He laughed that I had that much confidence that I could convince him. And I spoke. And he stands up, gives me a standing ovation. He's crying, I'm crying. Flies me down to Dallas, Texas the next week to speak to his company. Next week, he suggests that commands me, tests me to see if I'm that committed and invites me to join the National Speakers Association. In those days in 1982, you had to be sponsored, so Zig Ziglar sponsored me in the National Speakers Association. We met each other in Chicago for about 10 days before and after the conference. And then he invited my wife and I down to Dallas, Texas to his Born to Win seminar, 5 days, first seminar I'd ever been to. I had no idea there was an industry. And it was at that seminar that Zig Ziglar introduced me to somebody who introduced me to Nancy Reagan. And Mrs. Reagan invited me into the Reagan White House to take her Just Say No program to all 50 states. And so between 1983 and 1989, I spoke to, if you do the math, 3 schools a day. Average student body had 2,500 students, 180 school days a year, but I would do 15 schools a week, 3 a day, 15 a week, for 140 school days a year. And I did that religiously between 1983 and 1989. So I spoke to way over 5 million teenagers in all 50 states and thousands of schools.
So that seems like taking speaking career pretty big, pretty quickly. Was the speaking industry a lot smaller back in the 80s, or is it?
No, it's just that the guy here at the convention, Mark Scherenbrock, and I, we go back to those days. Mm-hmm. He and I invented the high school motivational assembly. In those days, they had national high school assemblies, and you'd pick something. They'd have the retired Army band. So with all due respect, there'd be like some 90-year-old chubby guys show up with their tubas and everybody go to 7-Eleven. And so Scherenbrock, he really went into the student body, and I came in from the vocational student organizations, FBLA, DECA, blah, blah, blah. But then in about 85 or something, then I made the transition where I was doing all those schools, junior highs, teacher and services. So I honor Mark, but he and I, we kind of figured it out. But the message to all wannabe speakers is you just need an inside champion. And there's a great book out, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but it's Change or Die. And you got to Google the article.
Why do you recommend that one?
Because
Change or Die.
Change or Die.
Okay, I get it.
Because what he does is he quantifies the reality. Do we make small changes, the drip campaign, or do we make massive, immediate, drastic changes? And if you really want real change and transformation in your life, you need to make a drastic move. Mm-hmm. And that's what a significant emotional event will do to you. If you're a chain smoker and you're addicted and you're smoking 40 cigs a day, and that's 2 packs, and the physician says you have emphysema, you have lung cancer, if you don't quit smoking right now, you're going to die. And people start trying to stop smoking 1 cigarette at a time, and they put 9 patches on their bodies and they sweat it out. They go, this isn't working, and they start smoking. Or they keep smoking because they're trying to just reduce the amount of smoking that they're doing. And I'm saying, no, stop. Right now. Stop swearing. Stop eating lousy food. I had heart surgery about 7 weeks ago, and I haven't had a Diet Coke since. I haven't had a diet drink because of aspartame. My diet's better. I have better energy. I have a prescription vitamin D pill and a prescription vitamin B pill. Who would have thought? Energy. And I'm taking better care of myself already in 7 weeks. I've changed my lifestyle. I've changed my mindset. I've changed my habit. And it wouldn't have done me any good with high cholesterol to say, okay, I'm going to cut my 7 donuts a day down to 3. That doesn't do anything. So let's reverse engineer that in the speaking world, in the coaching, counseling world, training world. Zig was my guy. Zig was my inside champion, my hero, and he opened every single door. And we talk about the 6 degrees of separation. In my experience, it was like 3, maybe 4. Lila Bjorklund, Warren Pugh, Speaker of the House, Zig vicariously through tape, vicariously and now in person, and then he introduces me to somebody who introduced me to Nancy Reagan. And that single-handedly in 1 year blew my career out. I spoke to every single one of the 16 national student leadership organizations, every single one of them except 2. So I spoke at 14 my first year out of Zig and in the National Speakers Association. The only reason why I didn't speak at those last 2 is because President Reagan was the keynote speaker. It ticked me off. He shouldn't have gone with such a lousy speaker.
So obviously it's building relationships.
Oh, yeah.
And I've heard you talk a lot about building relationships.
And
but
networking at the highest levels.
I've also heard you talk about serving versus going into it, what's in it for me,
Absolutely.
trying to
Yeah, so I'm a storyteller, so I need the next adventure. I need to stay fresh so my message is fresh. I need people to wonder, I wonder what Clark did this week. So you don't have a once-in-a-lifetime experience once in a lifetime. You should have one every Tuesday. So I love to go fast. I love to go high. I'm crazy. I was the Intermountain Motocross champion. I was the State Golden Gloves boxing champion. I was Intermountain ski champion. Everything I do, I go to the max. I'm extreme. And when I was introduced to the military and had an opportunity to start speaking to them, when they would say, what do you want? I'm like, I want to ride an F-18. I want to ride an F-16. I want to fly with the Thunderbirds. So now, as a civilian, I've flown every fighter jet in the United States Air Force. I've flown the F-18 Navy jet, but every single jet in the United States Air Force that has 2 seats. So I've flown all of them except the F-22 Raptor and the F-35.
Are those on your bucket list then?
No, because they don't have 2 seats.
Okay.
And they legally, they can't let me take off and land. They just give me the stick once we're airborne, and I get to fly 30 out of the 90-minute sortie. But we do all the air shows. I've flown 6 F-16s, 2 F-15s, flown the B-1 bomber, the B-2, the stealth bomber out of Whiteman Air Force Base, Missouri. I went up into space in a U-2 spy plane for about 5 hours, saw the curvature of the Earth. These are stories that I can extract messages from that make me so unique because, as far as I know, I'm the only civilian that was ever invited to go up to the edge of space in a U-2 spy plane. I needed a presidential signature to give me permission, all-day training, spacesuit, the whole deal. You can see it on YouTube. So Google YouTube, Dan Clark U-2 spy plane.
So going back a little bit on this story, so you build a relationship with them so much so that they wanted to reciprocate.
Yeah, because I've spoken every single time for the military for free, over 350 free speeches. When they know my speaker's fee has been $18,000 to $20,000 for all these years, 10, 15 years, and they do the math, at some point they go, what can we do for you? You're doing all this for free. I've been downrange 8 times entertaining our combat troops, Afghanistan, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, Ethiopia, Abramunch down there in Ethiopia on the Kenyan border, all over Asia, all over the world. And never once have I ever charged the military a dime. So they willingly say, absolutely. And I know exactly what my bucket list is. So I say, yes, I'll do it. And they unashamedly at some point say, what can we do for you? And unashamedly I say, I want to ride an F-4. So many of my buddies were shot down in the Vietnam War in an F-4. I want that experience. I want to fly an F-4. So out of Eglin Air Force Base, I got to fly an F-4, Phantom jet. So cool. Mm-hmm. And, Black Hawk helicopters 100 feet off the ground going 100 miles an hour over Baghdad. That doesn't happen to most people,
So how do you develop relationships in another setting, like outside of the military?
You just serve. The quotient, any sales cycle in my mind is give, then ask. Give, then ask. And so when on my website, when you go danclark.com and you push receive free gifts and training, what happens is you get free gifts and training. And if that interests you, you might get a little email or something that says, hey, if you want a good laugh, check out Dan's Adventure to Space. It's a 15-minute documentary. I took the video camera aboard with me. You can see the whole deal, endless blackness of space, curvature of the Earth. So you give, and most audiences, I let them download one of my 34 books. It doesn't cost me anything, and it endears me to them. What can we do for you? So, and sometimes, you trade out. So I've had, 2 of my buddies and their sons. We had 3 fathers and 3 sons. We did a father and son outing to the Indianapolis 500. So with my connections with Andy Granatelli, we get on the track. I get a 200-mile-an-hour ride around Indianapolis 500 Motor Speedway in the back seat of Al Unser's car. I'm a thrill say that's so fun. So now I can talk about the lessons I learned. But we're up in the suite, catered dinner. We're on a private bus going against traffic, motorcycle, police escort. So I traded that out with a huge insurance company. There's so many ways to get these once-in-a-lifetime experiences. I leave on August 8th. I don't want to put a time capsule on this interview, but August 8th through August 27th, I'm going to Australia. So I'm speaking 5 times, but I'm actually one of the crew members in the Hamilton Island America's Cup class sailboat race. And I mean, it's the largest sailboat race in all of Australia.
Wow.
I'm actually a member of the crew. So I'm getting in shape, taking care of myself, trying to get my strength back from my heart procedure. But that's kind of a trade-out. The guy calls me and says, we've heard you speak to our company twice, but do you want another experience? I'm like, yeah. He said, how about joining our crew? You come down 3 or 4 days early, get some training. I'm going to be doing the whole little deal on the race. I'm like, that's cool. I've raced dog sleds in the Arctic, and I go to race car driving school at Nürburgring in northern Germany. And you just got to go for it. I don't know people who can stand up and say, take a risk if they don't.
Okay, so you speak, you give, and giving gets you opportunities to build new relationships, get these more experiences.
Which
but
builds
then
your content.
It gives you more
It gives
stories.
you more stories. Yeah, it's a cycle. It's a self-feeding process that just makes life so exciting.
So I know you've got a lot of books that have a lot of these stories, but I'm sure there's a lot of stories that haven't been written down.
Yeah.
How many stories do you think you...
I have no idea. But I love it because the way I prepare my speech, I look at life and speaking as a golfer. A golfer goes out on a golf course with 14 clubs in his bag, so no matter where the ball sits, in the sand, out in the bushes, out in the trees, which I've been there a lot, or right in the middle of the fairway, you can select the right club to hit the ball exactly where you need to hit it. So if you're constantly preparing yourself to speak instead of preparing a speech, you're adding arrows to your quiver, you're adding golf clubs to your bag. And I take the time to have an experience, once in a lifetime experience, tell it to somebody so I can verbalize it, write it down so I can actually see how long it takes me to read it to someone so I can time it. Then you go back and edit so every word pays its own way. Then you go back and you replace the boring verbs, like I ran a company, and you romance the language and replace them with illustrative word pictures, like he orchestrated a movement, so it makes it more eloquent to listen to. And then I make the story funny, I make the story provocative by adding a quote or making up a quote, and I make that story emotional. And then once I've told it out loud 3 times, it's locked and loaded in my brain, which is a powerful library, and I move on to the next story and the next story. And then when I'm in an anal mood, I'll extract these stories and I'll categorize them on paper. All these stories have to do with customer service. All these have to do with sales. All these have to do with leadership. All these have to do with parenting. All these have to do with coaching. All these have to do with ethics and morality and motivation, whatever the case may be. And now I have all these life experiences that are funny, provocative, and emotional, with life lessons that I can use to illustrate any industry message that they're looking for in any speaking engagement. So once they book the speech, I require a conference call with the meeting event planners, and preferably with the CEO too, and I ask 4 major questions. They evolve into 12, but the 4 major questions are: what's your theme? How did you come up with it? What does it mean to you? Number 2, what's the purpose of the meeting? Education, continuing education units. Networking, is it an incentive, travel because you met your sales quota? 3rd question, who are the attendees? What do they do when they wake up? And if they're sales professionals, do they call on the doctor? Do they call on the medical group manager? What's the deal? And then the last message, what's your message? What do you want me to say that will echo what you've been teaching as a CEO all these years? What are the buzzwords? And as I'm on this conference call, I don't have time to take copious notes. Every one of my stories has a title. I've already polished the story. So the guy said, I want you to talk about this. I'm like, no problem. I'll write that story down. I want you to talk about this. Oh yeah, I haven't told that story for 6 weeks. That'll be fun. Man, I haven't told that story for 7 months. That'll be even more fun. But they're already polished. I can teach them on the drop of a hat. And now I file that conference call note or several notes away. And as that speech comes up on my calendar in 6 months from now and a year from now, and I haven't thought about it since, And I get on the plane, I pull out my file, and I pull out the conference call notes, and I'm like, I remember that phone call. Whoa, and that's the joke those are some jokes I'm gonna tell. Whoa, those are the stories I'm gonna tell, and this is what the message is, and I'm fired up. Then I go to the reception, connect with everybody. I haven't got a memorized speech. It's an inspirational conversation. I'm never bored because every speech, even though I might tell the same 3 stories today and tomorrow, I tell them in perhaps a different order, different jokes or one-liners or spontaneity comes out, and I draw out a completely different message from that same story.
That's awesome.
And that's why I have so many stories. I'm the primary contributing author to all the Chicken Soup for the Soul books because I really love life, go for that once-in-a-lifetime experience, take time to extract the messages from our significant emotional events, the birth of your child, a car accident, your dad's battling cancer, you've just got this major award, you saw something happen at a major sporting event and strangers came to the rescue. There was a shooting at a country concert in Las Vegas and strangers were stopping and saving people's lives, and America's the greatest country on the planet because we really do care about each other. I mean, you don't have to experience the experience, you have to experience the experience, even though it's vicarious going through somebody like you, Nate. Nate gets shot in the shoulder at a concert, and I'm the stranger who comes in and says, hop in my car, I'm taking you to the hospital. I mean, you can extract from that all kinds of messages. What happened when you got to the hospital? How have you kept in touch? Even though Clark's ugly, what allowed you to give him mouth to mouth in that situation? Because I never would have. He would have just died. I just don't. That's not nice. Whatever the case may be.
So you're obviously sounds like you're very, very systematic and specific, intentional with archiving, documenting, and these stories. So
and then the best part is when I get through speaking, on stage I pull the little pranks. Man, I'm out of time. I've got stories I wanted to share with you. I hope you'll have me back.
I love it.
And then my contact management system, eSpeakers, awesome. You should all be on eSpeakers. I was the first speaker. Art Berg invented it. He's number 1, and I was number 2 in their list, their roster of speakers. I'm really proud of that. I helped them kind of work out the bugs. I was the guinea pig. In the contact management system, as soon as I'm through speaking, I write down every story I told, every joke that came out of my mouth, all the spontaneity, and now I have that on file. So if they do hire me back the next year, I look at my conference call notes, I'm like, oh wow, I told these stories, so I'm gonna completely change my illustrations. I'll change all the stories, all the jokes, but the messages are still gonna be exactly what he or she needs them to be. And that's why 73% of my business is return. That's why I know nothing about social media marketing, because I've been the spoiled brat. My phone's just rung off the hook all these years since 1982. Speaking way over 100 times a year, paid speeches, and then you throw in the multiple free speeches to create that moral obligation and that sense of that my life matters, that I'm making a difference, I'm leaving a legacy. The goal isn't to live forever, the goal is to create something that will. And that's what I'm trying to do as a speaker. My goal is in every audience, one-on-one with Nate, 1-on-10 in a boardroom, 1-on-20,000 in an arena, is to have everybody leave me saying, I like me best when I'm with you, I want to see you again. And we can accomplish that if we just connect through stories. And stories are narratives and illustrations of actual life-changing experiences. So I'm always looking for the next interview like you are. I'm always looking for the next experience because that perpetuates my dream to change the world one story at a time.
Awesome. So to kind of wrap this up with one kind of just down-to-earth question. We've been here for a few days. I don't know if you've had any experiences or conversations that you've written down, or what's one of the most recent ones that you've written down that you can use in the future?
Yeah, I have a photographic memory. I don't really have to write it down a lot, but then at the end of the day, I do write it down because it's the cognitive experience of seeing and feeling and doing and the memory that comes from that. This conference, I've learned that titles matter. I used to just blow them off. Somebody would say, what's the title of your speech? I'm like, because they don't know that I don't write out a speech, I can't just tell them. I'm like, I don't know, make one up. But now I have to be much more intentional, much more serious about coming up with that catchy title like Change or Die. I think people would go, whoa, that's a pretty heavy session. Maybe we should go to that one, So another thing is, if you think you know it all, you don't know anything. And I've been in the Hall of Fame since 2005, and I've learned so much this conference. And I've been a professional speaker for 35 years. Think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned so much from so many people, reconnecting with all the old pros. It's just good to be around the best and the greatest. Everybody needs to join the National Speakers Association. You need to come to all the conventions. And I'm not a hypocrite now because I'm back. I haven't been around for a while, but this is good.
Say your opinion on this then. Why should somebody who's never thought about speaking speak, like become a speaker?
Because your chances to change the world, even if it's inside your family, it's the ripple effect. It's generational.
I mean, that's what I'm about. I love influence.
I'll go to the edge. I'm kind of an edgy guy. I'll go to the edge.
Do it.
If the national statistics here in America are that the average household family who's on welfare and has no more than a high school education, and it's most of the time a single parent family, they average 5.6 children per family. The two-parent households, and this isn't to slam single moms, my mother was the youngest of 9 children raised by a single mom. I honor my mother, I honor single moms, I honor all of us who have been raised by single moms. So don't misinterpret. But when you have a dual parent household for role models in the home with a college education who are not on welfare, living off the government subsidies, they average just under about 2.1 to 2.2 children a year.
A year? You mean per?
Excuse me, per family.
Yeah.
Not a year. Sorry, that was stupid. I live in Utah. Surprise. So 5 point something versus 2 point something in a dysfunctional family and a functional family. And you put that in the matrix of 10 to 15 to 20 years, and what's happening with our voter base? Idiots who don't know the issues. And they vote personality, they vote race, they vote gender. They don't have a clue about the issues. Oh, think about what's happening in our society. And if there's a movement right now to go with the popular vote versus the system that's in place, invented by our forefathers, obviously, and we go with the popular vote, we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot and in the head, because once the inmates start running the prison becomes chaotic, and you don't have a tail wagging the dog.
So you're saying,
I'm saying back to your
make
question,
your stand.
I'm just bringing it back to speaking. If you have a story and you have a life-changing idea and a philosophy that you know will change the world, that will bring out the very best version of ourselves, then you have a moral obligation to share it with the world. And in order to share it in a way that people will listen, you need to make it funny, provocative, and emotional, become a storyteller. And the only way you can perfect that skill is to come to the National Speakers Association and take it seriously. You can't just whip it off. We must be polished. And even though I seem so spontaneous and conversational, every single person who knows a truth, a universal truth, has a moral obligation to share that truth with whomever will listen. Because the goal, as I said earlier, is to have everybody leave us saying, I like you best when I'm with you, I want to see you again. And if our world, if America is being overtaken by uneducated folks, and this isn't Dan Clark 6 and 2, this is not a racist comment. Don't you ever accuse me of that. This is an actual fact, a mathematical fact, that if the uneducated become more than the educated, if they outweigh us, if they outnumber us, eventually something bad is going to happen. And if the uninspired and the unmotivated and let me live off of somebody else's attitude takes over our country, which it slowly and surely is, we're in deep trouble. Inspired people don't have to be motivated. And what would happen to our workforce? Right now, 80% of our workforce hates their jobs. Most people only look forward to Friday instead of Monday. They think they're paid by the hour, when in reality we're paid for the value we bring to that hour. How do we add value to ourselves? How do we add value to our enterprises, our places of employment, our families, our communities, our world? By adding something to the pie, not taking something away, by building the size of the pie, not dividing it up. Host and a parasite. If the parasite continuously lives off the host, eventually the host dies. We need to strengthen the host as speakers, as inspiring authors, as songwriters, as dads, as moms, as neighbors. And that's what the National Speakers Association means to me. It inspires me to be around everybody else who thinks like I think, that it's our responsibility to change the world one person, one story, one speech at a time. And I'm honored that you would interview me, brother.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
You have a good day.
Well, hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Had a lot of fun, Dan. I
Thanks.
appreciate that. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like it, subscribe, and where can they find more about you?
My website's danclark.com, and I have some online courses, on public speaking, on storytelling. Who would have thought? And I would love to come and speak to your organization or be referred by you to some organization. Speak about team building. Work with a lot of professional teams, a lot of cool companies who want to go to the edge and have a disruptive speaker that basically challenges everybody's belief system. Like, it's not all about teams lose. It's about winning. There's no I in team, there's no I in sucks either. There's two I's in winning. And we can talk about anything you want to talk about. I just love life, and I would love to be part of your team. I'd love to partner with you and your organization and see how we together can change the world. Create a culture of excellence together.
Awesome, Dan. See you tomorrow.